Okay, I'm joined now by Benjamin Voiry. He's head of marketing plant proteins at Roquette. Roquette has been at the forefront of developing high-quality plant proteins for years, and as we're going to discuss today, these latest launches in the Neutralis range show just how fast the field is evolving. Benjamin, it's great to have you with us.
Hello, Nix. Thanks for having me.
Now, before we dive into those new launches that I alluded to, let's set the scene a little. Roquette has been in the plant protein space for quite a while now, probably longer than most. From your perspective, how has the market evolved in the past few years, and where does this latest expansion fit into that bigger journey?
Yeah, thanks to notice that. Indeed, Roquette is close to a century-old company, and we have been into this protein business, starting with the wheat protein, by the way, more than 40 years ago, and more recently in the pea protein, if I may say more recently, like we started a program like 30 years ago on pea protein and having our factory 20 years ago. So we are in this field for a while, and it's true that in the recent years, particularly the last 5 years, have been quite hectic in terms of demand for protein, plant protein especially, in our case, where there were demand for all type of application, specifically for plant-based meat and plant-based dairy, where we have been investing a lot to provide some decent offer and relevant offer for this market demand.
Mhm. And on a personal note, what first drew you into this space? Was there a particular moment or trend that made you realize the potential for plant proteins?
Definitely, let's back 5 years ago, there were really this demand, and it was not just protein, because there were this expectation to be able to formulate new products, and it's where you were seeing the challenges that were facing our customers, and it's where we got a big program on innovation to provide a new type of protein solution, either isolate or textured protein. So that was quite great when you like innovation, when you like challenges, to work as a team and bring this to the market. And it's a journey that continues, because market is evolving, as we will be able to discuss about it. The market is evolving, the demand is evolving, and we continue on this journey to adapt to these demands.
Mhm. We've seen so many different directions in alternative proteins, from precision fermentation to more recently cell cultivated meat. What excites you most about the role plant proteins can play in the future food system?
Plant protein was seen by some others as a transition before, after being replaced by precision fermentation or cell culture meat. And it's not the case. They are all living there. They are all pros and cons. And the plant protein is very exciting as such. There's a lot of potential. There are a lot of things. It is tending, and there's still a lot of demand. And what I like a lot with plant protein, in fact, because we bring a nutrients, but you bring at the same time something that is functional. So we have to play on both, being something nutritional, but you want to bring these functionalities by how you do it. If I take the example of pea protein, you may have two pea proteins that will not behave the same, so the value for our customers will not be the same. So it's really great in this plant protein by playing on the origin of the protein with different sources like pea, but like more recently the fava or the wheat. By knowing them, you can bring some different value to our customers, and that's really exciting to play on that.
Well, that gives us a great base to build on. So let's turn to that news of the moment. Roquette recently extended the Neutralis range with 2 new textured ingredients. Can you walk us through the thinking behind those launches and why now was the right moment to bring them to market?
Yeah. As you say, it's an extension, so that means we rely already on more than 10 grades of textured protein in a range, mostly based on pea. And it's kind of, in our approach, incremental innovation linked to the feedback we get from our customer and the market demand, because it's evolving a bit. And all our current products are bringing a value for different application, different usage, different process of our customers. And we always identified what is then needed, that our customers are looking for, and that we can, based on our expertise and asset, brings to the market and being complementary. So it's really linked to the usage we have by our customers, depending if you want to make a burger patties or a chicken product or a sausage. one product will not fit for all needs, so you need to adapt. And we really take into consideration the feedback to improve, because you will see that it's linked to some details that are then very important for our customer to bring something relevant for their consumer.
Mhm. Obviously, the standout bit about that news was that you've entered textured wheat for the first time. That feels like a bit of a milestone. Why did wheat make sense for your portfolio, and what gap are you aiming to fill for your customers with that move?
It Yeah, and you're right. I mean, we are in the wheat protein for a while, but that's our first move as textured wheat protein. We have been relying on catching the growth and the demand for pea protein that was really demanded as an alternative to wheat protein or soy protein. But we know that there's a demand for wheat protein thanks to its specific attributes. So it's really to rely on what brings the wheat protein, the gluten, and what we can do with it to provide, in our case, something that will be fibrous. In fact, it's a matter of textured protein, the Neutralis T-Wheat 600L. And thanks to gluten, we can get this nice fibrous textures that will be different with pea. And again, it's not a matter of better or worse, it's how it's better adapted for what our customer want to do. And in this case, really the right texture, the right fibrous texture, and the right bite that we'll be able to obtain thanks to this product.
Mhm. Well, that brings us nicely to the development side of things, because, as you say, getting plant proteins to behave like meat, especially chicken, that's always been a bit of a challenge for the sector. Um, Replicating that fibrous, tender texture of chicken, it's tricky, isn't it? When you were working on Neutralis T Wheat 600L, I believe the product is called, what were some of the main technical hurdles you and the team had to overcome?
Exactly. Indeed, when we decide that, we said, so we need to get something that will be fibrous, that will get, again, not a lot of taste, because it's also important. The color is also important when you want to replicate chicken type of products. So that's where the way we work as a team with our expert in R&D to combine their expertise on sensory science, on extrusion, because that is the way we process the wheat through an extruder to obtain this specific structure. And also, let's not forget it's not just to obtain an ingredient that is looking like nice, but it's also how we use it in application with our application center on knowledge to demonstrate that it brings the real value. So it's definitely, I would say, as less as possible trial and errors, but it's really formulation works, checking what we bring in terms of fiber length, thickness, cohesion, and how we can also replicate that over time to ensure that there's a kind of a reliable product. And if we want to position it also in another way of thinking, because we are talking here about dry textured protein, it's also a way for us to provide to our customers sometimes an alternative to high moisture extrusion that is very efficient, but can be more costly or use an equipment more than a kind of ready to use dry textured protein. So we always think about all of that to show what we can formulate and provide that to our customer.
Mhm. Functionality, that's another aspect. It's one thing to design a texture in the lab, but another to see how it performs in real-world applications. You've highlighted qualities such as thermal resistance, juiciness, and low hydration requirements. For formulators, what do those features actually mean in practice, and how do they show up when someone is cooking or processing with these ingredients?
Yeah, in fact, that are then the critical part of the ingredients, it will be defined, and how it will allow our customers that have their own equipment, their own process, to get something efficient, reliable, and doable. On this industry of plant-based meat, we are still relying a lot on equipment that can be used also for meat, like grinders, like shredders, and so on. So it's where we have been working on the parameters of the products to consider how it will be used by our customers. And we need this process also to get these specific fibrous textures applied in their products. So it's really linked to keep in mind that you need a product that works well, but also when it's used by our customers, it will work also on a cost standpoint with the right equipment, not too much, easy to hydrate, and so on, because we take that into consideration that the cost is not just the cost of the raw material, the cost of the ingredients, but it's also the cost of use for our customers.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, consumers, they can forgive a lot, but if the bite isn't right, they notice immediately. So texture has always been a big challenge for producers. What kind of feedback are you hearing from your partners about the mouthfeel and bite of these new proteins, especially when they're used in cooked or reheated meals?
Yeah, indeed, I mean, we saw from some consumer data that I mean, more than 30%, the texture is quite important. And when we are in this type of products, it's not a liquid, it's not a paste, so you need to get some differentiated bite, different when you break it into your mouth, different yes, perception of the product. So it's something that is quite important. Um, on our case, the feedback is really that they are quite impressed by the fibrousness of the product. And if I may, one of kind of comments internally that was surprising, it's when we use it in application. Sometimes what you don't like with meat is that you've got the meat stuck into your teeth. And we get the same bad experience, if I may say, with these products, showing that the fibrousness was quite amazing, because it replicates also what you don't like from meat potentially for this specific case.
Mhm. And I'm guessing maintaining that texture across different processes, whether it's freezing or microwaving, that's a challenge as well for manufacturers. So how do you support customers to make sure the eating experience stays consistent?
And it's well, it's definitely on the way Roquette is approaching any development. Again, we are an ingredient manufacturer and ingredient suppliers, but in the way we are organized, we've got application center, application expertise. So we always work on checking what our ingredient is doing in terms of application. And I think it's also something in linked to the discussion about how the market is evolving. We use at the early beginning related to plant-based meat, it was a lot of restructured product, packaged food, and the market is evolving also with different usage. The food service is getting also more important. It's not absolutely all restructured. We try to get products that are structured without high moisture extrusion. So there's a lot also of evolution about type of products, and we will talk also about kind of a new development beyond mimicking, like hybrids of something totally different. But it's really here again how we can test on our side the value of our products to be more relevant with our customers and that they can go faster. We expect to give them more time to work maybe on the flavoring they want and so on, and not learning too much with our ingredients. We transfer to some extent our knowledge on our ingredient and the way the value it brings in terms of application.
Hmm. Let's switch now to applications, Benjamin. Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to how those proteins show up on the plate. You designed that wheat version with chicken style products in mind, and the pea version for chunkier, slow cooked dishes. Can you share a few examples of where they're working particularly well so far?
Exactly. So indeed, we have launched two products. So if I focus on the first one, the Neutralis TP700XC, it's based on pea protein. This one is more a bigger chunk that you can use as such, more or less. The idea is you don't expect to cut it, shred it, and it's more to make products that are in a slow cooked sauce dish, like bourguignon, tagine, goulash, or even kind of teriyaki style product potentially. So it's really the idea of using it as such. Again, here potentially avoiding using a high moisture extrusion product because the product as such is right in terms of texture and in terms of bite, in terms of size. And then we use it like in your product directly, and it will take the water from the sauce potentially. So minimal preparation potentially. We see it as a good fit potentially for food service. But we know also our customers may want to use it differently, but that's the first ideas of how it can be used in sauce dish recipes mainly.
Hmm.
Then
Um, Sorry, go on.
the Neutralis T-Wheat 600L that is based on wheat, it will bring more fibrous texture, this one. So it's really more, in this case, more for restructured meat style as such. So structured where you add the water and you will bind that, and will really provide based on what you form, something that will be fibrous and is more adapted for chicken style or dog style type of product.
Um, at the same time, Benjamin, I'm hearing more about demand for hybrid or plant forward formats, not just pure meat analogs. Are you seeing that shift too? And how are those new proteins helping your customers meet that demand?
Yeah, exactly, and that's yeah, for now maybe a year and so on. It's something quite important, quite massive, and we always try to also balance what is the real market demand and what will be successful. We know the plant-based meat has been more challenging in recent years. Overall, and just to give a good picture, the plant-based protein business is still demanding. There's other market demanding more, and we know that within this own plant-based meat category, you've got some reformulation. You want to make a new type of products. So there's still a demand for mimicking, restructuring. Some companies are keep pushing that, and there's still demand. Then, in a way to also other market contexts, so not relying only on flexitarian, but we can. There's also some drivers like the high price of meat that is really high, that have been increasing a lot for few years. That makes also sometimes some approach different, and hybrid is one that is not totally new, but gaining more interest, either on a customer side for manufacturer to make new products that will be more affordable, better carbon footprint value potentially, and easier formulation with a good taste and so on. So that's something that is driven. And what we need to ensure is how consumers will follow that, what will drive them to buy such products. That are, again, not totally new, but kind of new effort from different companies to bring to the market new hybrid products. And the second one that is very interesting is really also that you expect something that will not taste like something you know. So that means you may want to keep the convenience potentially, but you don't want to compare, because we know that when you compare, you can be most of the time more disappointed than you appreciate your product. And if you make no comparison point, you can be very creative, still bring a lot of protein, still bring a lot of specific bite, and it's where that's something very interesting, where there's new market offer that you need to give a new story, or you bring this protein as a product center of the plate or not, with a specific taste. There's some companies doing it already, and there's also how far away you go from the differentiation versus meat. Sometimes you got the same, I would say, texture, but not the same taste. You will rely on spices or flavors, that's something you will not add. So it's very interesting. And also, we also work on this type of new development, because the textured protein, not only the new ones, but also the older ones, are interesting to be used alone or in combination to bring this specific and differentiated texture that you may expect. So here is really a great part, because you are creative and innovative for this new type of product.
Mhm. Something I noticed in the announcement was the emphasis on simplifying formulations, which feels particularly relevant, given the clean label push in the market. Are you able to tell me how these new textures are helping reduce ingredient lists or avoid the need for things like restructuring agents or binders?
Exactly. No, and it's true that there's a lot of demand to reduce the labeling list, to simplify, to get products looking better. And in this case, the products are designed to reduce this complexity of formulation. So, as I said, if the protein is bringing more functionalities right from the beginning, you may avoid to use sometimes some additive you don't want. In the case of the Neutralis TP700XC, as was saying, the product can be used as such. So the labeling will be quite minimal, and it's really the idea of making a product where you don't bind, you don't restructure, and even for the taste, as it is neutral, quite neutral, just by having the other ingredients like the sauce as such that will bring the same flavors. It's really okay to don't get any taste from what you may expect from pea, which is not the case. On the neutrality with 600L, having a product with the light color, high fibrousness, you may try to reduce the binders that are used. Again, if you make restructured products, it's all linked to the process and the ingredients used, but it's really the approach again to be able, as much as possible, if it's your expectation, to reuse this kind of additional ingredients thanks to the properties of the textured protein by itself.
Hmm. And from a manufacturer's perspective, what does that mean in terms of keeping labels clean and aligning with consumer expectations around processing?
It's really well, and as the ingredients that we are providing are performant, linked to the neutral taste, the light colors, it allows them to go faster and avoid to use colorants for the flavors. It's an easier way to formulate on that and the way to present it. So that's really on this approach of making ingredients more performant with more functionalities, then they have less work. The approach also linked to what we were saying in terms of new development by trying not to mimicry meat. It's where you got more freedom. Also, not to absolutely use a masking agent or beef flavors, chicken flavors, or whatever. So, relying on other spices and so on, you can also get a kind of a cleaner formulation.
Mhm. Of course, Benjamin, none of this innovation exists in a vacuum. Brands are under increasing pressure to source sustainably and scale efficiently. You've emphasized regional sourcing, particularly with the wheat protein being grown in Europe. How important is that regional supply and security to your partners today?
It's something that is, by the way, even more relevant for plant-based meat. If you compare to meat, generally, when you buy something made out of meat, you may know when you go to the restaurant and so on most of the time where the meat is coming from. And the plant-based meat companies are the one more demanding to guarantee the origin of the raw material and where it is processed. So we are well positioned for Roquette, being here having some operation in Europe, in France, and using these European raw materials. And we can do the same, by the way, in Canada with Canadian raw materials. But it's really something that is requested by some of these customers. And it's really kind of a good approach for sustainability, not just on a carbon footprint approach, but also on using protein that are coming from Europe and that are helping the community to work on that. So that's something is real. Um, that makes sense. In fact, again, more beyond carbon footprint and allowing our customers to be able to get a story related to the raw materials, show what it is. We work a lot also on education when we work about wheat. Wheat is quite well known, pea a bit less. So we try also to educate our customers in order that they can also show to the customers where this protein is coming from, because it is grown in Europe. There's farmers behind this type of supply that we can then valorize and that consumer can taste and consume.
Mhm. And on the scalability side, brands are under real cost pressures at the moment, probably more so than before. How is Rocket supporting partners to scale up while keeping operations efficient and optimized?
Yeah, and so definitely that's this kind of offer. If you go for wheat, potentially the wheat protein is slightly more affordable than pea, so it's a way to get this approach. But also it's really on the way we design the ingredients, thinking about how it will be processed by your customers. So how it can go faster in their development, reducing time to market, the waste, on the operation itself, how they can leverage the water usage, the number of equipment they need, and so on. So that's all these type of things that we really want to consider, or also other cost of ingredients used in the formulation. And it's what we bring as a supplier, the ingredient plus the knowledge and the expertise to better assess that and go faster. But it's definitely something that is relevant. We know that plant protein is really well positioned, and if we compare to the current meat price, the gap is also enlarging, so that make it even more attractive.
Mhm. I don't know about you, but it feels like we're moving into a new chapter for plant proteins, one that's less about imitation and more about versatility and creativity. From your perspective, Benjamin, how are customer briefs and expectations evolving when it comes to alternative protein innovation?
That's a new, yeah, exactly, new ways to bring product to the market that some companies will follow. It will require a strong strong storytelling to the customers, because that's always also the way to explain why would you consume something that is sometimes less known. When it was a matter of mimicking, you were knowing the usage, you were knowing the expectation. When you go to these new products, you have to explain it, and it's where we try to help. And we know that anyway, there's some basics that are quite key, like the taste, like the texture, where you don't want to get off. You don't want just something cheaper if the texture or the taste is not right. If you are not convinced that it brings value to you in terms of nutrition, or in terms sometimes sustainability, it will not work. So we work a lot on this kind of addressing with our ingredient this expectation in terms of textures, clean labeling, to follow this expectation from our customers linked to the final consumer.
Mhm. And finally, if we look a few years ahead, where do you see the most exciting opportunities in textured proteins, both technically and commercially?
Well, let's be clear. Well, we follow this the new type of product. We mentioned the hybrids, the plant forward looking, are the one that we are working on, keeping in mind that we continue to invest also on plant-based mimicking. And after we see that it's always a dilemma, because we at the same time you want something that remains convenient. Convenience is not forgotten in the way we live, in our way of living. We still want convenience, so you want products that are easy to use. So we have to combine everything, and we see also some other usage that are potentially possible, like the food service getting more and more important, eventually the home cooking, that at some point were also more important, and how this textured protein can be also something in your kitchen for home cooking. That's something that is existing a bit, but that can be taking more importance. And us, on the ingredient provider standpoint, we know that our offer will also evolve, for different needs, linked to potentially other botanicals, because that will bring some other value, more in line with some demand. So it's a continuous, it's what makes things very interesting, because we continue to innovate and we adapt based on also our capabilities. We have been valorizing, as we said, wheat recently, and we may continue to valorize wheat for other usage because it brings other properties. But we see that as a kind of, again, incremental innovation to adapt to the different market demand, tackling all these needs.
Hmm. Benjamin, thank you very much for sharing all of these thoughts and insights. It's clear to me that Roquette is helping push the boundaries of what's possible in plant-based protein, and I'm really excited to see where all this work goes next. Thank you for your time, Benjamin.
Thanks a lot, Nick.